Good afternoon. Get set up here. Good afternoon. I'm Paul Reynolds, and I will be presenting our movie location. Um, and before we get into it, I'm actually going to play you a video.
And everything comes apart for traveling, see?
Right.
See them?
All by hand, man.
So what we got there is we have one of the local shops in Barbados, and what you see there is culture and interaction within that element in that country, and I think it's so beautiful, and I think it's great. All right, as far as the geographical layout, the location is around the Caribbeans, all right, in Central America, just northeast of Venezuela. Relatively flat terrain. It rises when you go into the central area of the region. As far as natural resources, we have fish, natural gas, and petroleum. And the natural hazards are uncommon or sporadic hurricanes and periodic landslides. So, due to the tropical season, you have to watch out for that. And we'll get into that on the next slide on the climate. All right, the tropical season usually ranges from about June to October time frame, but just look at the place. It's gorgeous. This is where we should shoot our next film. This is where it should be because it's pristine. Continuing on, as far as the government structures, parliament, democracy, excuse me. So we shouldn't have too many issues getting in and out of the area and out of the region. Its legal system is English common law. These guys actually received their independence from the UK in 1966, November the 30th. So they celebrate that every year as well. As far as the currency, the Barbados dollar is actually when you convert it over, it's actually about two US bucks. So $1 is essentially $2 in BBDs in Barbados. So essentially, with us shooting the film over there, we're actually doubling our budget, and that I think that those savings alone makes this place just epic and a place we should go. The BBD is also a fixed rate to the U.S. dollar and does not fluctuate. It hasn't fluctuated in the last 10, 15 years, I want to say. As far as the gross domestic product trend, in Barbados, the net worth was about 4.5 billion US dollars in 2016. We on average it's about 1.96 billion US dollars from 1960 to about 2016, reaching an all-time high of 4.6 US billion dollars in 2008, and we had a record low of 0.09 in 1961. And as you can see on the slide on the graph that you can see the fluctuation, how it went down. It went down from 2010 until about 2016, and we're back in action for the most part. Almost as high as 2008. So, as far as the real gross domestic product in Barbados, it's about 1.6%. It was about 1.6% in 2016. And the annual growth rate is averaged about 1.37%. That's ranging from 1975 to 2016, reaching an all-time high of 7.9% in 1979 and a record low of negative 7% in 1992. So we've been pretty much going up. A little fluctuation here and there in between 2012 and 2014, but we've been pretty much rising here lately. And I don't think the numbers are going to change too much. Continuing on the per capita gross domestic product for Barbados. As you can see, we had the last record was at 1500 and close to about 1600. I would give that. I would round that up to about 1600 in 2016 when adjusted by the purchasing power parity. But as you continue on, the GPD per capita in the triple P and Barbados averaged about $1,400 from 1990 about 2000 until 2016, reaching an all-time high of 16. Actually, reaching over 16 in 2007, and that was close to the aforementioned 2008 year where we had the GPD up at its all-time high in 2008. So just be cognizant of that. And then we had a record low around about 1100 to U.S. dollars in 1992, and that was when we had another record low as far as the gross domestic product. So those things correlate, right? Per capita GPD and the regular GPD trend. As far as the wealth distribution, the majority of the local populace is they stay in wood huts. However, they essentially have access to electricity, medical facilities, and clean water. So it's fairly well developed there. Barbados is actually one of the most, I guess, you could say, affluent Caribbean islands out there, as far as tourism, as far as exports, and we're going to get into that later on in the brief. But of note, the minority has remained in the area. That has remained in the area is still wealthy from business ventures that took place during the colonial era. However, a lot of them have lost their political influence due to the majority of personnel or people in the area being of African descent. So as far as enemies, we really don't see Barbados having too many enemies. It's essentially a peaceful region. However, the island is a transshipment point for narcotics and ships that are shipped to the U.S. And Europe. So I guess in a sense you have to be cognizant and aware of that. But as far as having actual enemies, you don't really see any enemies. If anything, that all that's doing is keeping the local police department in the area employed, as well as keeping us as U.S. citizens and the DEA and whatnot employed. However, you do have, I would say you have to watch as far as Venezuela as far as enemies, because they do have some maritime things going on that they want to kind of exceed or go off into the area or the realm of Barbados. But for the most part, that's just business. So it's really not it's an economical thing. It's not really a wartime thing. As far as the labor force, the majority of their labor force lies in services. So that falls in line with the tourism and things of that nature. And then you have 15% industry, and then you got 10% agriculture. So and which is strange because Barbados was actually one of the top producing areas for sugarcane, molasses, as well as rum and things of that nature. So it kind of transitioned here recently. I think it transitioned around the 70s time frame is where they actually started doing more tourism or whatnot. But as far as the labor force, that's what you have. If the inflation rate, it rose about 2.2% from 2015 to 2016. So it actually not that bad. And this is an estimate. This isn't actual data, but it's actual data, but it's not, you know what I mean, set in stone. As far as the infrastructure, you got one airport. It's hardball surface. As you can see to the right, you see a hardball surface roads with the bus and the car. As far as your roadways, you got about 1,700 kilometers of roadways. And then as far as your pipelines drilled, you have 33 kilometers of gas, 64 kilometers of oil, and refined products of 6 kilometers. And that was in 2013. As far as their seaport, there's one large seaport in Bridgetown, which is the capital of Barbados, and pretty much a very beautiful place. As far as exports, they mainly export sugar, molasses, rum, and other foodstuffs and beverages. So the country produces chemicals and electronic components. And when you look at that number of exports, they actually export about 466 million U.S. dollars per year. Well, as of 2016. The year of 2015 slips my mind at this time, but it was relatively close. As far as your imports, you have mainly consumer goods. This is for tourism. You see, I got eateries. This is actually from one of the local restaurants over there, local cuisines that one of the restaurants served over there. You got consumer goods, machineries, foodstuffs, construction materials, and chemicals and fuels. Okay, and their main sources, their main imports come from Trinidad as well as the U.S. And we benefit fairly well from them, and they benefit fairly well from us as far as the tourism and whatever comes into that country. As far as imports, it spent about $1.5 billion. That's estimated in 2016 as well. As far as your other population demographics, it's predominantly black. Predominantly black. You have 2.7% white. You have 3.1% mixed, and you got 1.3% East Indian, and then 0.2% other. Okay, so as far as that, you would see predominantly black people in the Caribbean islands, in the Barbados, which some people find strange, but I mean, this country actually was in uninhabited before slavery time, and so essentially, what happened is we brought a whole bunch of slaves were brought over. As far as the UK brought a whole bunch of slaves over, and they worked the land, and they produced a lot of your sugarcane, molasses, and etc. As far as your religion, you mainly Christian-based religions. Don't really see too many Muslims in the area, but I mean, I'm pretty sure that these guys are acceptable of Muslim religion and any other religion, as far as Buddhism, Hinduism, or anything else. But those are some of your other demographics as far as the population in that region. And why would I want you to come to this country? Essentially because it's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's rich in culture. And because it's cheap. Think about it. I double the US dollar by moving the film or moving the movie to this area, to this location. I've doubled it. So that means what we can do is we can cut the budget in half and everything will be great. Shoot. Maybe we can, interest Rihanna in coming into the area because we're shooting in Barbados. That's where she's from, right? At any rate, I appreciate your time. I'm gonna let you see the references so you can kind of check me. And without further ado, that is my brief.